Happy Friday afternoon. Thank you for tuning in today. I'm Jim with the Brewers Association of Maryland and Grow Fortify. We normally do virtual beer tastings on Fermented Friday. Today we're going to be talking about mead. This is going to be a really cool conversation. We're going to learn a whole lot about the art of crafting great meads here in Maryland. We're going to learn about the history of this wonderful and delicious elixir, and we're going to hear about a lot of really cool takes on modern mead coming from our friends at Charm City Meadworks. So in just a few minutes, I'll bring both James and John in to the chat. We'll have a great conversation for the next hour. Feel free to shoot us any comments you have, questions you have. This is going to be a really exciting chat, and I'm really, really looking forward to this. Right before we get started, also wanted to just remind everybody that Maryland's breweries, over a year into this whole craziness, are all open for business. They're there to support you. We ask that you support them. So please find a way to go out this weekend and either go to your favorite local brewery, order beer for pickup from your favorite local brewery, order for delivery, or order from breweries that are shipping. Maryland's breweries depend on your support, and they are thankful for it. So if you have the opportunity to support them at all this weekend, please do. On top of that, we are looking at some fun stuff on the horizon. May the 10th kicks off American Craft Beer Week. We have some fun things that are going to be going on throughout that week. So keep an eye on our social media for Maryland Beer, both on Instagram and Facebook. Check out marylandbeer.org. We're going to have a lot of announcements over the next few days about a lot of really cool stuff coming up and some fun ways that you guys can all stay engaged with Maryland Beer, despite all the hectic craziness that's going on in the world. So without further ado, get your comments ready. Get your questions ready. I'd like to introduce James. James, how are you this afternoon?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you very much for joining me. I am really looking forward to this talk.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for featuring us. It's exciting to be here representing Maryland Mead.
And we will jump a little bit more into Maryland Mead in just a minute. And John, how are you this afternoon?
Hey, I'm great. Great. Thanks for having us. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you very much for joining. I know that this is 3 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Friday isn't always the best time to try to get people to do this kind of stuff. And we kicked it off. All the tasting rooms were kind of closed to business. So it was like, hey, we're going to give you an hour to talk about your brand. Now it seems like things are opening up a bit, and I'm contending with the revenue generation. So I hope that I'm not stepping on any toes.
Nope, you're all good. We're actually in the process of reopening our tap room for indoor seating and everything. We're looking at around the middle of May. So we're not quite there yet, but we're getting there.
Very cool. So James, to your point about Maryland Mead, I think you may have been the first Maryland Mead makers in the Brewers Association, if I'm not mistaken.
That's entirely possible because we were really the ones that drove forward the legislation a couple of years ago to allow mead to be treated as beer. It's one of those things where being stuck with the wine laws and the daisy chain, which was sort of a relic of the way that mead was treated in the past. We wanted to really open that up because we want mead to become an everyday beverage, and with our seasonal products, it's perceived as beer by the consumer, and consumed more like beer, and the shelf life is a little bit more in line with that. So we joined BAM. It's a really good I think association for us. It's where we feel like our home really is.
I feel like and we'll talk a little bit more about your products specifically, but I feel as though ever since I saw your products come onto retailer shelves, they spoke to me as a beer drinker more than they did as somebody looking at things through the wine lens. I know specific accounts where I would be in selling beer, I would find placements near your products and say, oh, it makes sense. It fits in. It's canned. It's got really lively artwork. It's not something that looks a little bit more sedate and relaxed like some of the wine labels that are out there. So I think that you brought something very captivating to the market.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. We lucked out a little bit in that we happened to launch Charm City Meadworks in a major metropolitan, not just area, but corridor, which gave us an opportunity to reach a lot of accounts and a lot of people. But it was a niche that, at least such that the type of product and the type of mead that we make didn't really exist back then. I mean, there were a couple of meaderies out in other, states that were kind of thinking about lower ABV, lighter meads, but there wasn't anything like it, certainly anywhere close to here. So we kind of got people to perceive it as an everyday beverage and created our niche, at least in the area.
Do you attribute some of that that embracing from the trade? Do you see any of that coming from the styles of meads that you're offering, or do you just see that as mead needed to be on the shelf and that's what we were producing?
I think that really mead did have a place for people, but I think from a public perception side of things, it was always more of an occasional use thing, or more of a novelty, something they'd have at the Renaissance Fair over the holidays. An exception would probably be bee nectar, but it was still, bee nectar's price point is a little bit higher, and it was still a little bit more exclusive, single bottles, a little bit higher ABV. So by putting a carbonated, more sessionable mead in the market that was light and refreshing, we hit a nice balance between the beer drinkers and the gluten-free, folks, cider, that kind of thing. And it was something that was, I think, really, it's still a challenge for us conveying to people what it is and getting people excited about it. But we, I think, have at least succeeded in our area at pretty good penetration, because somebody said a long time ago to me, they sent me a picture of a mead can and a crushed mead can in the gutter, and we're like, "You've made it." And I laughed about it a little bit because it was true in a way. Like, when you become part of somebody's recycling because they're just drinking it that much, that means that you've really succeeded if your effort was to make it an everyday go-to, which is what we've done.
I recall a Union Craft Brewing commercial from a few years ago where they were talking about seeing their cans in trash cans throughout the city, and that was like their aha moment that, like, hey, people around here are really kind of buying into this whole thing. So I think that you've struck something very similar with the idea of the gutter can being your signal of success.
I walked by a wounded soldier once, a few blocks from the Meadworks, and it was just sitting there on somebody's stoop, and I was like, all right, we're doing okay. Like,
well, that's great. You have some sort of ubiquitous appreciation throughout your city. That's wonderful. People are showcasing what you're doing in a great way.
And I get that. The craziest one was when I walked into I was getting out of a Uber or something in front of my house in the middle of the winter, a few years ago, back when we were even smaller. And somebody's like, "Hey, it's the Mead guy." Like, wasn't anybody I knew, so I don't know how we got to that point, but here we are.
Well, so let's get to the start of this whole story. What got you started with Charm City Meadworks? What was the inspiration for this, at the time, very novel approach to producing mead in Maryland?
So I took up beekeeping and home brewing both in college, and I went to NC State for college. I'm from the Eastern Shore, and they had a really amazing beekeeping program, which I took an intro level class and enjoyed it so much that I ended up continuing on to some graduate level entomology classes, and I had bees and had all this honey. And like any good college student, it's like, wow, I can make some alcohol with this. Let's give it a shot. So a friend and I started experimenting more and more with it, and I had a couple of more serious efforts at career jobs along the way. But I think to some degree, I always wanted to have a small business, and this was a interesting option for us. And a good friend, Andrew Gefkin, and I were deliberately kicking around small business ideas in the craft beverage industry. And even though mead was something that I had actively worked towards doing, I always kind of thought maybe this is a back burner thing. Are we going to open up a small brewery? Are we going to do a micro distillery? And this is back in like 2013. And I'd been doing like, 20-gallon, 25-gallon batches in parallel next to each other, like testing various, variables and trying to really hone my technique. And when we got done, sort of talking about opportunities with a number of things, it's like, well, this whole mead thing, nobody's really pushed it out there with the kind of style that we talking about, and let's give it a shot. It's probably going to be an uphill battle because it's a new product, but like let's see what it does. And we started in 2014 with a business that was so small. We were in a 1,200 square foot space. We didn't know what we were doing. We thought we did. We both came from engineering backgrounds. We saw it as a side gig that we wanted to turn into something, and we had a little bit of savings that we each put into it. But we started too small to be doing much, and we were at first, our only retail presence was the farmers market, and we were doing it basically out of the trunk of our cars, self-distro. It was pretty entertaining way to get going. All the experimentation came off my kitchen counter, and it's hard to believe that at this point we've got 18,000 square feet, not all of it production space yet, but it's a big transition. Can't hear you, Jim.
I like to mute myself because I live on a busy street in Frederick and there's constantly traffic and it sounds like a speedway. And then I get this bright idea that I want to speak and I forget to unmute myself. I was going to say that I recall back when you were smaller, I was in the trade selling beer, and a former salesperson of yours drove up and had like a couple cases in the back of their pickup truck and was like, I'm out doing deliveries today. I'm so excited. This is a great time. I love dropping this stuff off. Every day that I get to sell meat is great.
That would be Ben.
I thought so. It is great to see where you started and where you are now, because I think that growth is not only saying something about how you guys are managing the business and the products that you're putting out there, but it says something about the consumer's excitement for what you're doing and the fact that you are definitely filling that niche in the marketplace. So kudos to that.
I still don't think without any question, I am very happy with the choice that we made, and we do our own thing. Very proud of that. Beer would have been an easier fight.
Yeah, probably.
But that's not why we're doing what we're doing. So it's good. We've got our own thing.
Well, that leads me to wonder, do you feel that new placements in accounts, are you hearing that those are being stifled by kind of the saturation of the beer that's on the shelf? Are you fighting for the same shelf space, or does an account have a little bit of a carved out section where you will always fit?
It varies depending on the retailer. I mean, we're always the market is just so flooded with products, whether it's beer, cider, canned cocktails, and whatever. We feel like we're guaranteed a little bit of space, but on the other hand, is it 2 slots or is it, and I don't expect everywhere to be a giant mead section, but if you have to look at the climate as a whole, it's really competitive. You're competing for the retail, the buyers or purchasers time, attention, the shelf space. You're competing for the same sort of brief split second in a consumer's head when they walk in into an account and make a choice. So it's a tough thing, especially since habits are tend to be centered around beer or wine.
What are you finding as a successful way to make that entree into the consumer's mind? Is it just having a great product that's there, or is it something that was backed up by doing tons and tons of retail tastings? What is it that is that thing that opens the door?
Retail tastings and farmers markets were really key to our early success. But as we've grown, we're trying to build off word of mouth and also start to learn how to really do effective marketing. So digital media, going into new territories, making sure that we have all of our point of sale stuff lined up. It was stuff that we didn't do, that we're only now really getting into doing the way that we should as a larger brand. Because, if we go into a new distribution territory in Pennsylvania or New Jersey or something like that, how do you spend a shorter period of time introducing people to what you make if it's a new thing? Because it's not like we can go out and do the same number of tastings or farmers markets. And really, we're trying to introduce something that effectively is a novel product for most people. So trying to get an average consumer to look at something on a shelf and be like, man, that looks interesting, I want that, when they don't know what it is, and when the people who are stocking that shelf don't know what it is a really tough challenge. So we're trying to kind of come at that from a number of different ways, because farmers markets and liquor store tastings worked great where we started, but as we grow, that's not really an option.
I recall from the very beginning of seeing Charm City Meadworks products that all of your releases were compelling. All of the flavors that you were putting out, all of these plays on ingredients really kind of were challenging to somebody who appreciated, lots of flavor in different things. I like beers with different additions. I like, I'm a culinary mindset. When I walk into a liquor store, I'm thinking about what I want to eat. Why am I buying anything? And I always saw your products. It stands out to me the very first time I really engaged with your bottles was at Whitey's. I was doing a retail tasting there. There was a stack of them on a shelf, and I'm like, these are beautiful bottles. What the hell is in here? And I'm reading the labels, and I'm like, man, these sound so exciting and so great. And when I'm thinking about that, I'm wondering if you're using that mindset of playful ingredients and unique combinations to keep up with making the consumer think, hey, I want to try that.
Well, I think that was especially that packaging, like going with those 500 ml Boston rounds and doing the cans was really a great effort to try and get people to go, hey, what is that? I want that. And really credit our first designer, Becca, on that, on the label artwork and that stuff, because we that's certainly opened a lot of doors for us. I also got to thank Rob Goss at Whitey's for while we're talking about him, because he was such a great early supporter of ours, as he is for many people.
It's always nice to have Rob in your corner.
To speak to the flavors, I mean, yeah, we really try and make some stuff. My litmus test is always, would I drink the shit out of this? And then I ask everybody else. That's what we want, the reaction of a consumer, like, this is going to be awesome. You know, we don't want to release stuff where it's kind of like, oh, that's interesting, or that's okay. I want, if we're going to put a product out, I want people to feel like they're going to want to have it. Not to overserve, but just like, hey, I could have a few of these. It's like having a really good dessert where you want seconds, you know. You need to have that kind of impact on people's palate, or it's not going to go anywhere.
I think it was your basil lemongrass or something was the first that came across my palate, and that was my reaction, James. I could drink a few of these and really enjoy this.
It's a shame because that's been one of our most challenging ones. The basil itself is a really the flavor compounds in it are very sensitive to heat and poor storage in ways that, like, you know, the thing about beer is that people understand what it is. So when you have it in a liquor store, you know, if it's nice beer, it typically gets stored in a walk-in cooler or something. And if it gets a little funky after 6 months, you know, people blame the time on the shelf for the poor storage. But with mead, people wouldn't think twice about like throwing a, you know, 4-pack of that basil lemongrass in the back of their car in August and then writing in an email going, hey, it tastes a little funny.
Yeah, I imagine that stability with some of those ingredients must be a tough and challenging thing to learn about. You know, you smell them, you taste them, you know that they're going to be great. You make this mead with them and they're great, but what's the shelf stability look like? What is the longevity of that package?
So we've finally gotten to a point with our process and where I feel like we're putting out most of our stuff in a really, you know, where it'll be enjoyable at a year, and that's good enough for me. But the basil lemongrass was always and has been one of our toughest because I think it's our best product. But when the stuff's, you know, once you're a little bit of an older business and it's on the shelf for 2 years at some dead end, you know, spot, like you don't want a customer to have a bad experience.
That's true. So before we start jumping into the products that you guys are going to be talking a little bit about this afternoon, can we talk a little bit about what mead is? We've kind of hit it on the head already. Sure. James talking about his background with the study.
Jim, I'm just gonna move my laptop real quick, so you're gonna see my stream change a little bit.
I tell you what, I'll pop you out while you move, and then I'll put you back in when you get settled.
All right, great, thanks.
All right, John, you're on the hot seat.
Oh, what am I doing?
Do you want to give us a little bit of, and the viewers, a little bit of a background about mead, what it is, what it has been historically, and kind of why it has seen a renaissance?
I can definitely do part of that, and then hopefully while I'm in the middle of it, James pops back in.
That'll be great.
But yeah, mead is just a technical term for alcohol made from honey. So at its very base, mead is, you know, honey, water, and yeast fermented. You know, typically a lot of places, and you know, it's one of the world's oldest alcohols. A lot of people know it by that, like, oh, the Vikings, they drank the mead. But they, you know, back then, and you think about like the Renaissance fair, a lot of that is higher ABV, you know, sometimes 15 to 20% ABV, very thick and very sweet. So a lot of people, when they think about mead or what they know about mead, that's what they know. You know, and kind of like what James is talking about, that's one of the toughest challenges for us is letting people know, you know, that we have a little bit of a different product than that. Now, as far as why it's seeing a renaissance.
I used that word deliberately.
Yeah, I see what you did there. Yeah, I don't know exactly why. I wonder what James's opinion is on that. But yeah, I really, it's very interesting how many different forms mead can take and how unique it can be. But that a lot of it, or a lot of what people know, is just this one specific style. And our goal has been kind of trying to put it out there that, it's just, just like cider uses apples and, beer uses grains and wine uses grapes. Like, it's just another fermenting agent. It's just another, and it can be used in so many different ways and tastes so different.
It's interesting that you're kind of pointing at how all of the other industries get flavor into their products. I'm wondering, and James is back. You look like you're staying at a Frank Lloyd Wright designed home. This is like a beautiful staircase, wonderful lighting.
It's a campy ski lodge basement Airbnb. While our house is being worked on in Baltimore, we're up by our in-laws. You can see all this like sweet wood paneling.
Oh, it's great. And a pool table.
Yeah, which the bumpers are on basically hard as rocks on this thing. I don't know how long it's been here, but it's been a while since anybody used it.
John was just filling us in a little bit on kind of the history of mead, kind of as one of the world's oldest alcoholic beverages. And we were talking about the ingredients that go into it. And I was just about to ask John if there are different types of honey that are used to manufacture mead, or if you are looking for specific honey from a specific type of, I don't know much about bees or honey making. So I'm curious what goes into your selection of honey and where you're getting honey.
Well, so that's actually a really interesting question. And a lot of people don't think about honey with the level of depth that I think most bee makers or beekeepers do. Honey is basically dehydrated nectar. And the nectar sources, or the floral sources that the bees are gathering it from, really determine the flavor. So as varied as flowers smell different, the same thing really occurs with honey, and I would say that consistency in our product is a really big deal for us. So we get a blend from a big a very consistent blend from a honey packer up in Lancaster called Dutch Gold, is our sort of main thing. But we also use some varietal honeys. We've got, in our most recent Hive Society stuff, we've got some tulip clobber honey from a local guy down in Anne Arundel. We have, I have actually a sea container full of Tanzanian Miombo forest honey. That's long story behind that one. Headed in just in the next couple of days. And these honeys all have really different, unique notes, and we're trying to incorporate more variety in what we do. It's tricky doing that on a large scale because you have to be able to procure a large supply of varietal stuff and try and balance that with a desire for consistency so that everybody has the same drinking experience.
Abby from our team is saying that she now has a newfound love of mead and is curious if Charm City has any of their own hives. Do you own any hives in the area, or are you leasing hive space that you can call your own?
I own some hives, but they're more of a hobbyist level. We would need an incredible amount of bees to support what we do. I mean, I don't think the scale is easy for most people to think of, but we'll say in an average month, we go through about 6,000 pounds of honey. And that means 275-gallon totes. And in a bee's lifetime, which is about 28 days during the summer when they're really going at it, they will gather, or at least as a worker bee, they'll gather the about like, I think it's like half a teaspoon worth of honey, which is, you know, roughly the size of a bee, to put that into perspective. So they
only need a few 100 million of them.
Right. So we would need a pretty big bee farm of our own to do that. And it's an entire separate business. And I think it's important for me to support pollinator, health. And we have a special, really nice native plant garden in front of our place. We've been working really hard to do more pollinator friendly gardening in the city, native and planting on a large like street scale side of things. It's important for me to keep bees and be involved in the beekeeping community, but I don't have the time and to manage a team of people running tractor trailer loads of hives around. It's just not a feasible thing.
I think that this episode could turn into several because I have so many questions now. That information just about the hives has opened up a bunch of doorways that I would like to go down, or hallways that I'd like to go down, but I think that we're going to keep this
Well, I will say one other reason that we have not had any hives on the property is because up until a year and a half ago or two, we didn't have air conditioning at Charm City, and bees are really good at repossessing spilled honey.
No way.
So if you don't have air conditioning during the summer, you got all the doors open, and if you're working with honey and do what we do, there's honey everywhere. So do you really want bees on the property?
That's I never would have imagined. I figured once it was taken and you put your pheromones around it or scented it up somehow, they wouldn't want to be near it.
You would find, I'd be shocked to find bees can, if you have a large quantity of spilled honey, they'll find it if it's a mile and a half away, and they will go crazy. So I think now that we have air conditioning, I really want to put a big observation hive in for people to go after, but it's just not that, that's sort of going to be the limit of it for us, I think.
Very cool. Well, I look forward to having you on under a different conversation, maybe something about sourcing honey or something like that, because I think that that's a really intriguing thing. So hopefully you and I can make our schedules align for that. I think it would be wonderful.
We actually have a really neat, I'm involved in a second or another business doing a really interesting approach to that. So happy to talk about it some other time.
Cool. So let's talk a little bit about your lineup of products. I have to imagine, since you're in the modern day craft beverage game, that seasonality plays a lot into the releases that you're scheduling and planning. I'm looking at some of the suggestions that you and John made earlier for products to talk about, and definitely feel like we're talking about stuff that's appropriate for spring and early summer. So what does your lineup look like, and what's compelling you to make such new and interesting flavor combinations as you're viewing the calendar and planning your releases?
I would say I'm getting echoey here a little bit. I would say it's a really big team effort. We talk about as a team about what kind of stuff we want to be putting out and get real excited about it. So we try and put ourselves in consumer shoes and kind of balance that with some of the product ideas that come out of our team. We hired a local brewer, Lynn Pronovus. Lynn, I hope I pronounced your last name perfectly. But last year during the middle of the summer, and she has been a real breath of fresh air in what we do. So she and I have been bouncing a lot of ideas back and forth. The rest of our team, the sales guys, the in-house folks, I think have all got a sense of sort of the tastes and the flavors that we like. The idea of combining. So we try and make it a real team effort for coming up with ideas. And in fact, Lynn and one of our other brewers, Matt, have both contributed some recipes for our Hive Society, which is this new thing that we're doing with sort of more exclusive honeys and other ingredients. So it's a the seasonality of stuff. We think, what would this flavor go well? Or we're coming into spring. What do we want to do? Strawberry ginger is a great one. That's a good spring thing in our still meads. Strawberries always come on early in the season. Ginger really cleans it up well as a nice little bit of spice. We just try and come up with stuff to say, what would I want to be drinking during this part of the year?
And it looked like John was just holding up a bottle of the strawberry ginger.
Yeah.
You want to walk us kind of through the tasting notes of that one?
Yeah, for the strawberry ginger. Yeah, so the strawberry ginger is definitely very, very well balanced. It's just got, definitely starts on the front with the strawberry, and then the ginger it's just like a little zap of ginger at the end, which just balances it out perfectly. It's not overly sweet out of our stills. None of our stills are necessarily overly sweet, but that one might be the second, probably the second driest after the original dry, I'd say, out of our stills.
And when you're saying still, you mean still mead, not stills like pot still or column still, correct?
Correct. Still mead, as the bottled meads, as opposed to the meads that we have in our cans. But yeah, it's very light and floral. That's why we use it as a spring mead. It's amazing. It's my personal favorite of the stills. I really, really love the strawberry ginger. And
with your still products, what's the recommended proper way to serve that? Are you serving that on ice? Is it something that you're chilling the bottle and serving from a chilled bottle, or serve warm? What do you recommend for best?
So really lightly chilled is usually best. Serve like wine. I find over ice sort of cools it down a little bit too much and dilutes it, which I'm not really a big fan of, because you don't fully enjoy the sort of the way that it's meant to be enjoyed. And if it's too cold, a lot of the flavors won't really waft into your senses the way that you'd like. That being said, everybody has their own way of enjoying things. So it's just sort of the suggestion from us.
As a product that's a little bit more viscous than honey or other beer releases, is aromatic interpretation a harder thing with mead necessarily?
No, I mean, and most of our stuff isn't really viscous in the same way that a lot of the heavier or sweeter meads in the past have been, especially our lower ABV stuff. A lot of the, people are a little bit surprised at how light the mouthfeel is, even when compared to beer. It's certainly more delicate in a lot of ways because you don't have that real malty backbone that you do with most beers. But we have a good way of sort of finding our own balance. And again, there's always senses of, I guess one of the most interesting things is always like, everybody's palate is very different, right? So you would have a different sensitivity to ginger spice than John, and in turn me. And like what we need to do as a company is make sure that we come up with, even if it's just an informal way of hitting a nice point that'll appeal to everyone. And our mango Camapeno is a really good example of that, because you can put in, this much pepper and not have it be apparent. But if you go this much further, it'll blow you out of the water. And in that really small gap is where you need to kind of get the right amount of pepper and have a number of people go, well, I would want to have a few of these without it, sort of building up on my palate. And the trick again is just balance with every single product, because it's a really delicate thing.
John, what's the next product in the lineup that you'd like to talk about?
Well, James just mentioned the mango Camapeno, so we can definitely talk about this one. We just released this one yesterday for the summer. The mango Camapeno is probably one of our most hype meads. There's a lot of people who get very excited about it. It's my personal favorite. It's despite having the mango, it still runs very pretty dry, and you just get definitely a little bit of mango on the front, and then just a little bit of the heat on the back. The funny thing about the Camapeno, we brought in the guy who actually, his name's Joao. He imported, really championed bringing those peppers on a commercial level into the USA. They're a Mexican pepper that's only located up in the cloud forest outside of the Camapa region of Veracruz. So he came in, we learned so much, tried some of the peppers by themselves, and one of the great things about the Camapeno is even though it has a little bit of that heat, it dissipates very quickly, as opposed to a lot of different peppers. So when you're drinking a couple of them, it kind of helps in that way of it not stacking up on your palate, because the heat does, even though it hits and you get it in the taste, it doesn't just linger there and burn your mouth for a long time afterwards. But man, the balance in this one, the heat with the sweet. I mean, heat and sweet's always been a big thing. So it's just very, very good. Very popular with our diehard fans, and when it's not in season, we get a lot of asks about it. So happy to have it back.
For anybody who's viewing right now, if you Google Camapeno to find out what this thing looks like, every other picture is a Charm City Meadworks label. So it's like a pepper, a label, a pepper, a label. So that was pretty fun.
All the other ones are probably off of Joao's website from Chile Camapeno.
That's actually the one that I'm looking at right now. I have never seen or heard of this pepper. That's fascinating.
It's a little heirloom pepper, and he was a farmer's market friend of ours, and it was a good match. What can I say?
That's great. I love being introduced to new peppers, especially ones that pack a lot of flavor and don't have that like lacquering tendency of just striking the palate with everything spicy and leaving you kind of blown out.
Yeah, for sure.
What do you think that draws? Is it just that beautiful mix of like bright fruit and I'm reading the description of the pepper. It says it's like a citrusy pepper notes and all that kind of stuff. It just totally marries with the mango beautifully, and that little bit of sweetness from the mead just puts it all together.
It's light, it's summery. The sweetness is more perceived just because of the fruit flavors, so you don't really have that kind of cloying bit underneath it. You could easily hang out at the beach and drink a half a dozen of those, and it's just perfect. I mean, fishing, backyard pool, like to me, that's always one of my favorite products that we make, and it's a great summer one.
Well, it sounds like your high praise for it is matched only by those of your consumers who are hyping this thing up. I've never thought that there would be a hype mead, and I'm blown away that the second mead we talk about is the hype mead. Way to go.
I've done a couple of these virtual tastings for influencers on their Instagrams, and every single time there's 3 or 4 people that pop in. They're like, "Where's Mango? When's
There you
Mango
go.
coming back?"
Hey, as long as there's a following and there's people demanding the product, you got to keep making it.
Absolutely.
What's the next one you'd like to share with us?
I guess we'll go with our Out of Left Field. This is one of our newer releases. Here we go. Check this out. I really want to show the can because this is one of the first times that we've really branched out and on our art style, partly because we do have that following and core people that know what we are now. We aren't as invested in trying to explain what it is. We can get fun with it and bring so this is the Out of Left Field is a baseball themed mead. It's served right outside of at Pickles and Sliders, right outside of the stadium. It's Orange Crush inspired, the cocktail. So it's very heavy on the orange flavor, lemon lime twist, and then with wildflower honey. And it's very light. It's in 16 ounces. And we wanted it to, be something out there, by the stadiums that people can drink and have a few of them and drink them all day. You can't down Orange Crushes all day and end up standing up, but you can have a few of these. We brought it down a little bit. It's only 5.5% ABV as opposed to what a lot of our products are, hovering right below the 7%. So it's just very light, very refreshing, full of orange flavor, and it's been doing very, very well. You said you're out in Frederick. I'm out in Frederick too, and this one has really made its way all over Frederick. If you go into any of the stores out there, it's done very well for us, and with good reason. I mean, the art's great, the product backs it up. It's one of the most excited products that I'm most excited about right now.
When we get done with this call, I'm going to have to ask you where I need to go this afternoon to pick that up. I'm actually Facebook messaging on the side with a retailer right now asking if he has it in inventory.
Yeah, I definitely can. I've got a big old list.
That's great. So what was the motivation to put that into a 16-ounce can? Was it the idea that this would be something that's consumed at accounts near the ballpark and it just makes sense? Or is it because that's what the craft beer consumer is looking for, is the bigger format?
I'll let you take that, James.
It's a combination of things. I mean, we like the idea of having a better perceived value, having something a little bit larger volume for people that are doing those single serving cans, and some are, beer gardens, or, I don't expect it to be in the stadium anytime soon, but, there's a lot of places that are looking for that. We also want to release some stuff that's a little bit more fun and exciting, and a little bit less core. So, those limited releases and seasonals and that kind of stuff, I think you're gonna see a lot more in 16s from us.
That's awesome. It really sounds, the more and more we're talking, that you are operating a mead business much more like a brewery than a winery. So I do think that BAM really is a great fit for you.
Oh, no question.
That's all I'm trying to say, but I think it's great. It's totally enlightening.
Well, we still keep our toe in the water over with the Winery Association because, being mead, we're always going to be somewhere in the middle. But I think that BAM's definitely more of our, sort of home. So I'm happy that we're able to be part of it.
That label artwork was very cool. Did you work with somebody in-house, or did you have local artists that you were working with for that design?
We worked with a local artist. I think one of our guys in-house, I had some sort of relationship with him, identified him, and thought, man, this would be really great. And, there's always a lot of discussion because part of it, you want to kind of give an artist an idea of what you want to have for a concept. And I'm really proud of our team, because we have started to work a lot more collaboratively in particular this year. So like coming up with a concept, and this is what we want, incorporated into that. Like that was a team effort putting that label together.
That's awesome. It's great that that the fun and exciting like local artist appeal on labels is not stuck solely to barley based beverages anymore. I love this idea of more collaboration, more input from the art community, all that kind of stuff.
Me too.
John, you've got a couple more flavors on here, and then I wanted to give you guys a chance to talk about the Hive Society a little bit more at length. So which mead would you like to discuss next?
I was going to jump into the Hive Society, but
let's do it.
Yeah, let's just hop right into that.
You take the lead, man. You show me where you want to go.
All right, that sounds good. So the Hive Society is something that I know James wanted to do for a long time, and we started at the beginning of this year, where it's a subscription quarterly based service, where our biggest fans can we make some really new and unique things. With Lynn coming on board and Matt being as great as he is, and collaborating with James, it's been a great opportunity to bring some of their most creative visions to life that we might not have been able to do in our regular scale. Stuff like really unique honeys and ingredients that that might be logistically difficult to produce in that way. We can do this for our most passionate fans. Each quarter they get a 4-pack of 16-ounce cans of a brand new product and a 500 milliliter bottle of a brand new product. Our bottles, this is what one of the bottles looks like. I'm
going to put you on primary so people can see that a little closer.
So we've got dipped in wax. We got a little label there.
That's beautiful.
Hive Society and big, nice black bottle. And then our cans. One more time, I'll show on here. Really, really love this can artwork too. These are specifically for the Hive Society. And these are for our newest release, which we're actually packing up the boxes today. And a handful of people have come in and picked up their boxes already, and we'll be shipping the ones out next week. So the one in the bottle for this quarter, it's Venus. We have gone with a mythology theme for our names, and a lot of Venus. One thing about Venus is it's the Roman counterpart to Aphrodite, which was our first. Which was the first one that Lynn did. She did the can the first time around. This time she did the bottle. Her and Matt switched. So she wanted to keep it the same. But this is done with a raspberry honey. We fermented raspberry honey and Pinot Noir yeast from California. And it's just, it's 13%. It's going to be a little bit closer to a traditional mead style because of the higher ABV, but it drinks very, very clean. It is just a bit, it's really showcasing the process of what we do and just the honey. It's you can tell it's just done perfectly because of how cleanly it drinks. And really, really happy with how this one came out. It's awesome. The Persephone is a very, very unique one. We use a local tulip poplar honey. And then a lot of the botanicals that you find in gin, we're did infusions of those. So it's got tons of different ingredients there. I mean, we got the cinnamon, peppercorns, juniper, lime leaves, coriander, saffron, angelica, lemon peels, but it all comes together and kind of blends with the tulip honey, and it comes out very light and refreshing. And you get like a little bit of that taste you're familiar with, in a gin, but it's not overwhelming in any sort of way that, people have problems with gin when they don't like it. They say it may taste like minty or,
Christmas trees.
Christmas trees. That's what they say. That's what I was trying to say.
No,
So,
like medicinal Christmas tree taste and
no, it's like
overwhelming pine.
you can definitely identify a similar taste, but it's very subtle and light, and it just barely breaks through the mead, but it's just enough that it's just so refreshing. It's a great pick for our Q2 for springtime, and I'm just so excited to get this into people's hands. It's one of my personal favorite meads that we've ever made. James, have you had a chance to try this yet?
No.
What was
So you're making me
you? You're too far away right now, but man, it really did come out well. Matt did an incredible job with that one, and I'm so
That's
proud
fantastic.
of brewers. Like they've really, we've always had great products, but they have helped push that even further. And
so this Hive Society kind of sounds a little bit like a wine club.
Yes.
You sign up, you're notified a little bit ahead of time that your fulfillment's coming. Are you able to opt out or skip a quarter if you want to, or are you committed to the whole thing?
Yeah, you can skip a quarter. We don't do any. You can opt out whenever you want. You get charged on the day of the release, and we let you know ahead of time. And you get some additional benefits when you sign up. We've got them all listed on our website if anybody wanted to take a look. Yeah, we don't make people sign up for a whole year or penalize people. There are options in those clubs that you can penalize people for leaving early or something like that. But we don't do that. And since it started at the beginning of the year, we've had one person leave the club, and it was somebody who was gifted a quarter from someone else, and that was it. So nobody wants to leave. They're happy to, but they don't want to.
I really think that the packaging that you're offering and that experience of something limited is really cool. And if you are interested in joining the Hive Society, I did put a link to the Hive Society information page in the comments. So just click that. They've got a great breakdown of everything that's included. It sounds really exciting. That's an option I may have to consider. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. And then we have a couple little gifts that come in the box too. Like the first one, we had a commemorative special custom glass that we had made for people when they got their first box. For the second one, we've got these little, these are very nice, fancy pens, heavy duty, write incredibly well, along with this 33 Mazers of Mead tasting book. And it has a whole bunch of like different little tasting wheels for people to, kind of catalog their experience with the Hive Society. If they don't have the product anymore, go back, see what they liked and stuff, and just kind of makes it a little more interactive and fun experience for the people. And so we do something a little different every single quarter with what we put in there. Generally keep it something to complement, the mead and the club.
That's awesome.
Super fun.
I love that idea of kind of tying it to more of an experience than just what's in the glass. You're kind of making making more of an interaction with it, or making it something that's more about the lifestyle, which is very cool.
Well, we also are doing virtual tastings for these with our brew staff. I think the whole point is to come up with something that's an opportunity to get a little more creative and also engage better with our biggest fans.
I think that's great. I'm excited to hear how this goes. It's not something that you've seen many breweries offer in the state yet. So I'm encouraged to see how successful you are with this, because I see these clubs becoming something that, post-COVID are going to be important, because I think everybody's learned that face-to-face engagement with your clientele or with your consumer is extremely valuable, even if you're doing it virtually, and it's limited, and it's
100%.
So before we wrap up, I'm curious if you can offer just a little bit of guidance to viewers who are going to be going out. Everybody's going to rush to the store this afternoon and buy Charm City Meadworks mead. I feel it. I know it. I'm going to do it. What do you recommend I eat while I'm drinking mead?
Well, I think that we've got meads that'll pair really well with just about anything. You might want something a little bit more fruity to help cut through like a big red meat, but like a burger, elderberry would go really well with. But honestly, the weather's getting warm. Our stuff is typically pretty light and refreshing. The out of left field or mango como peno are great favorites of mine this time of year. I would like to say, Jim, just give a big shout out to the rest of the Charm City team. And I want to be really careful not to say my team because it's it's a team that all of us are part of. This last year has been an absolute roller coaster, and I don't think we would have survived without the level of passion and drive that our whole crew has put in. It's been really awesome, and I just want to thank him for that.
That's awesome, man. There have not been many cases where the option and opportunity to address the staff and thank them has gone undelivered. So that's awesome. I think your team, all of you collectively as a team, are doing a wonderful job. I'm hearing great things about Charm City Meadworks in the trade from people. I'm hearing your name pop up in places I didn't expect to. So that's all great stuff. And it must mean that you have a culture there and a group of people there who truly do appreciate everything that's going on. Well, gentlemen, I appreciate you taking your last hour and spending it with me. It's been a pleasure learning more about Charm City Meadworks. James, please expect an email from me shortly in the next few days to set something else up, because I think that there are a lot of opportunities to really kind of pull the lid off this whole thing and get people really digging what you guys are doing and learning more about honey production and how it can be used in so many great ways. And John, thank you for walking us through all the products. That was great.
All right. Sounds great, Jim.
I'm going to bump everybody out and we'll say goodbye. If you have any questions for Charm City Meadworks, please check them out at charmcitymeadworks.com. Check them out on social media, and please visit marylandbeer.org for any questions you have about the rest of the beer industry. Have a safe weekend, and we will talk to you next week.